CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a founder of Go Camp Pro, a year-round camp conference for summer camp professionals.
My name's Joe Richards. I'm the executive director at Pierce Williams Christian Center, which is a United Church of Canada summer camp and retreat facility located in Fingal, Ontario, sort of halfway between Detroit and Toronto.
I'm Jonathan Lee, co-executive director of Camp Kintel, a Presbyterian camp located north of Goderich on Lake Huron.
My name's Sarah Kurtz-McKinnon. I'm based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm a camp consultant and trainer, and my business is called Kurtz-McKinnon Creative. I'm also a partner at Go Camp Pro.
Right on. Well, I'm so excited to welcome Jonathan and Sarah to the show. Sarah, since you were going last, I'll just keep going with you. You've got a great camp story, don't you?
Which one?
How did you get started in summer camps? The best way to do it.
So how I got restarted in summer camp after many summers away, I was a longtime camper, was that I was a journalism major in college and I was really sick of it. And I was like, this is annoying. Everyone was super competitive and they were bothering me. And I had a dorm mate who was actually from Camp Stella Maris in New York. And he was a camp counselor actually for Jack and Laura. And I didn't know that. And Jack and Laura weren't a thing because this was 12 years ago. Yeah. And this dorm mate, Patrick, talked me into applying to a bunch of different camps. And I ended up working at Ann Arbor YMCA Camp Algonquin because I didn't get hired at Stella Maris, which is so funny. And also their director called me and apologized and just said he didn't have any room because he had so many returning staff. That always meant a lot to me. Yeah. But I ended up at the best place for me, which was Ann Arbor YMCA Camp Algonquin. And I thought it was going to be a one summer thing. I thought it was just going to be fun and relaxing. And then I ended up staying for about a decade. So I got hooked.
Right on. And since you've left camp, you've gone back to school.
Yeah, so I'm in the evening MBA program at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. So right here in Ann Arbor. So I'm doing that 7 to 10 p.m. at night.
Right.
So it's wild late nights.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to welcome you to the podcast, and thrilled to have some of your great ideas come through in what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Jonathan, you went to camp as a kid, but your camp story as an adult is a little different.
Yeah. Well, really, it relates to my wife, Teresa. But when we were dating, she was working at camp, so I came and worked at camp with her. And then when Teresa was doing seminary in Vancouver, we spent 3 years co-managing Camp Douglas, a camp on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia. And then I spent almost over 5 years with the Royal Bank as a financial consultant and a senior commercial account manager before the position came available at Camp Kintel when Teresa and I returned to Kintel. And I say returned because that's the camp Teresa grew up at and I had been at with her for a year. And then we've been here at Kintel for 10 years now as co-managing the camp.
Yeah. And as many people listening know, Camp Kintel is where I grew up, and Jonathan's wife, Teresa, was one of my campers when I was a counselor. And I am always so thrilled to go back and see Kintel and see the amazing things that Jonathan and Teresa are doing there. Jonathan's got an amazing head for the business side of camp, and I've always been impressed with how thoughtful Sarah is about that side of the things as well. So I wanted to invite the two of them here specifically because we want to talk about the business of camp today. And so many of us that get involved in this in camp full time come into it because we really like working with kids or we enjoy leading young adults. And so we work real hard to get qualified to be a camp director or a full-time year-round camp staff person. And then we're suddenly faced with the business side of things, and we're faced with the challenges of keeping up our numbers and growing our numbers, or expanding programs, and in really making sure that camp itself becomes sustainable. And so that's why I invited these folks here. I also have a lot of respect for what Joe has done at Pierce Williams in both building up the campsite of camp and also continuing how Pierce Williams has always run, where the rental side is, so the business side of the program is set up to subsidize the camp program so kids can kind of afford to go to camp. So Joe's also got some really smart stuff and has done some amazing stuff in fundraising. I'm not going to touch on fundraising specifically today, but I've always respected Joe's brain for that kind of stuff too. So Joe, I wonder if you could start us off. When you were becoming a camp director and moving from the program side to administration, how did you get yourself prepared to deal with the new aspect of the job, going from leading games and songs into making sure that camp is going to be there for the future?
It's a great question. It's one that for me didn't happen overnight. My camp history is that I grew up at a United Church camp, Canassary camp, and I did program and loved doing that. And I think that's why we all want to be camp directors, because the belief is we can do that for the rest of our lives. And I left Canassary and did some other things, worked with 4-H and did some other jobs to make sure that camping was a thing. And when I came back and I directed Canassary and Stevenson Children's Camp. And really, I was still focused on the program end because the board of directors was very hands-on with the business end, pay, all of those things. And I was a summer-only director, so I didn't have that commitment. My growth really came when I started full-time in camping, which would be January 1st of 99. I started at Canadian Adventure Camp and seeing how someone who owns a camp, so Canadian Adventure Camp's a private camp, and you see the business, you start to see the way people run their own business of camp. In between I'd gotten a degree in outdoor recreation, parks and tourism, and the reality is a lot of people go to a program like that because they want to be outside. They want to do outside things. I always went to it knowing that I wanted to work at camp. And so learning the business of camp was always something, or business in general was something I focused on in university, more ideas, more of the theory of things. And then working full-time for a private camp, so Canadian Adventure Camp for a year, and then starting in November of 99 with the Taylor Staton Camp Company, I really got a chance to mentor under a great business. So I saw how she ran the business side of camp, because she had absolutely zero to do with the programming side of Camp Amick and Camp Apameo. She was so focused just on the money end and making sure things ran that a lot of those skills I sort of picked up through osmosis. So when I started at Pierce Williams, I was already, I could just adjust with the business of camp. So my adjustment was really over a course of time, and I think that's the best way in my mind is to slowly move towards something. It can be a bigger challenge if you're thrown into a camp all of a sudden. If you're a program director somewhere and that's what you've always done, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's time for the step up. I'm going to become a camp director. I think that transition can actually be the most difficult in camping, because you're going from thinking about the campers' needs that summer, and when you're a camp director, you should be thinking about the future of camp and the campers' needs in perpetuity for that facility. So I was really lucky to adjust that way, and I don't mind having 10 months of no kids in my life, right? Like, I don't mind that idea of not being with kids for 10 months, because for 2 months I deal with campers and I am active with those campers and still running the business of camp. There are other camp directors who really struggle with not being hands-on with kids more often during the year, but I've gotten over that. I'm totally okay.
So, Jonathan, for you, how did you come to this philosophy, not business first, but that business is essential to how sustaining the camp stuff?
Well, I think managing a camp is the same as managing a small business. So I treat the camp as if it is a small business, and and manage it like that, we're so then all decisions are made around overall impacts. I think it's always important to look at all aspects of the camp. So the financial component is one important aspect. The program is one important aspect. The staff is one important aspect, etc. And you have to continually look at all the aspects and manage them together. And I honestly believe at the end of the day, if you're not ending the year with whatever level of profitability that you've set out and desired, then I think that's a key job as director.
Right.
I think I think it's a lot more fun for directors when their camp is making some money. But I also think no not-for-profit is sustainable if you're not ending the year with a balanced budget or some level of profitability. You have to put money back into your business.
Yeah.
But I include donations and all sorts of revenue in that to balance your budget.
Right. Right. And I'm going to come back to that, Jonathan. But let me ask Sarah, for you, what was the transition to more of a business mind to camp for you?
I mean, I knew I had a lot of learning to do. I had relatively zero business experience, except for the fact that my dad's an entrepreneur and a small business owner. And so part of me was like, I don't know anything. And then part of me was like, wait, I've been having business conversations at the dinner table for my entire life, with my family, and like just thinking about the strategy side of things and all that was something that I really loved. But the finance side of things, capital planning, even, basic budgeting, all that stuff, I had to be really humble about and ask a lot of questions and align myself with the people who did know so I could, make the right choices and just like become a sponge and learn as much as possible. Knowing that it was essential for the end goal, which was so important to me, which was who we've been talking about, the campers. So remembering that it was okay to say like, I don't understand that at all, or like excuse myself and like Google it and read the Wikipedia article on it and then come back. So a lot of it was just like being very open to new knowledge and knowing that there was a lot I still had to learn.
Yeah. So, excuse me, this is where I'm going to head back with Jonathan, but while I've got you, Sarah, what sort of stuff happened at your time at Algonquin to help with not so much building the skills, but more in terms of understanding revenue and building up the revenue at Algonquin?
Yeah. So I wrote down in my little notes here a quote from Tom Medeski, and I don't know if he originally said it, but he shared it with me. He's camping services in YMCA San Diego, and he said, "Without money, there is no program. Without program, there is no money." And you guys might have heard that before from another source. So for me at Algonquin, it all came down to the program. And so, there's so many components to business, and the financials is like keeping the financials organized and ethical and being strategic with how you use your financial resources and your money there. But for me, it was like really building the program to differentiate it in a way that it was like an essential component for the youth of my area. So I guess, that being said, like that was our business strategy. That was our business approach. The program, we really focused on the program. So it became so good that enrollment occurred because people really wanted to do it, not because we were like, had this like great advertising campaign or something like that. We really just had this excellent program. And that was the strategy. So that was exciting, and Algonquin was starting to fill rather quickly when I became the director. By the time I was the director, it was full and waitlisted December and January of every year. So that seemed to work very well for us.
That's awesome. And were there shoulder season opportunities at Algonquin too? Did you bring in revenue from spring and fall?
So Yeah, so this is one of the really interesting things at Algonquin. Summer was the bread and butter of Algonquin. And we
Mm.
see, this is one philosophy in camping where a lot of camps have like 200 things going on. And you're like, like we're doing a lot of things, but are we doing any of these things very well? So Algonquin really focused on summer. Once summer was like super, super smooth, really awesome. We had a couple of shoulder season things going on. We started to add a couple more things in, but really summer was the major focus.
Mm-hmm.
Of Algonquin. And I think that was really important because I think we looked at our resources. We used outside consultants. We're in very northern Michigan. It's like a 4-hour drive from our customer base. And we realized that although the site wasn't being used, there wasn't going to be a positive return on opening it up for a lot of shoulder season things, looking at the location, the competitors, all that stuff. So sometimes it's addition by subtraction, right?
Yeah.
By focusing in on that one thing that you're really going to do well, that's really the right fit for your business or your organization versus like, trying to throw a lot of paint at the board and see what sticks, just really focusing it. Yeah.
Right on. So Jonathan, you guys handle extra revenue streams extremely well, and have got tons of them going on right now. But it didn't always start that way, because for when you and Teresa first started, Teresa was the only one working full time, and now you've built up to many full-time staff and all these other things going on. How did you folks take the first steps towards not just sustainability, but towards constant growth?
Right. When Kintel was very focused, like Sarah was saying, with the camp she was at, where summer camp, it was exclusively a summer camp. And a summer camp that did fairly well. There has been fairly consistently was running 90%, around 90% capacity most years, sometimes a little higher. And they had never done, there hadn't been much thought to the off season. So, but we didn't want to grow the summer camp much more, because we like the number of campers that we're at. So looking at, then we decided we wanted to diversify and to grow the revenue to be able to make site improvements, because we didn't feel we could have the physical assets here that we have without better utilizing them. But I definitely agree with what Sarah said. We didn't want to just throw things at the board and see what stuck. We wanted to have a specific plan. So we decided to focus on a couple of specific areas that we thought suited the niche markets in this area, and would match with what competitive advantages we had, but also not doing what other people were doing exactly in our area. So then we started with school programming and doing some weekend rentals. And then the last few years, we've had a focus on adding weddings as well. And those are really the three things we're doing. And looking at around us, like one of the things that got us going with the schools, because it's very complementary to what we have. And then a few of the key things we wanted to add to augment our summer camp, with specifically a rock climbing facility and a high ropes facility, would serve a really good it would create really good synergy with school programming. Mm-hmm. And we looked, there's no camp within an hour of us doing school programming, and the closest camp is a Y camp, Camp Kauai, and they do an excellent job, but they run full with their schools. And they're over an hour from our site anyways. So we're looking at that going, they're having great success and they do a really good job, but they're turning people away because they're at capacity. So it seemed like a good market choice. And it's worked well. So we set a goal. We were hoping within 5 years that that off-season non-summer camp revenue could be at least 50% of summer camp revenue, so that we just thought it protects the camp. It just diversifies us, so we're not completely reliant on one thing. But we wanted to do that with the goal that the off-season, it would be profitable. It had to produce revenue that could go back into the site to make improvements.
Well, and I in all of the camp people I talked to, Jonathan, I don't know anyone who's made the site improvements that you guys have made in the past 10 years. There's no building at Camp Kintail that hasn't had work done on it in the past 10 years. And including tons of new buildings and other really cool physical improvements that suit the program, like high ropes, like an amazing new chapel and massive stairs and all these amazing things that and big not just stairs, but an amazing ramp into some of the program areas that that serve different populations and also help you in keeping the summer camp going. So that philosophy's obviously paid off for you guys.
Thanks, Travis. Well, and we also, amongst it, we wanted to set some other goals, and one of them was to have every aspect of the site accessible.
Yes.
And so now that's expensive, and it's taken us a number of years, but now, as of this year, there is not a single building or area of the camp that's not accessible.
Right. Yeah, it's stunning to see. To see. Joe, Jonathan was talking about identifying assets and figuring out how to make use of them. Is that how Pierce Williams got into the game of being an amazing rental facility and building up that side of what goes on at Pierce Williams?
I think part of it is that they just fell into that. This is a bigger question. Pierce Williams has been around, started in 1960, and in the late 60s there was two sides on the board. One side wanted to become more modern and move into year-round programming. As early as 68, 69, they were thinking about this, and the other side wanted to stay rustic. And I know the stories because one of our major donors for a new building was on the rustic side. Right. He then donated a lot of money to build a modern new building that's definitely not on the rustic side. And one of the talks I have with some other camps is they say, well, great, we're going to hire a full-time executive director because things seem to be, that seems to work for Pierce Williams. And I said, but wait, we've had a full-time person on staff since the early 70s. Yeah. So there's been a full-time camping person since 73. And so the rental groups and whatnot were all in place, sort of in place when I arrived. We've doubled our revenue over the past 10 years. And a lot of that is understanding that the rental groups pay for the subsidy on each camper. And it's one of these things where people look at your pricing and they say, well, how can you afford to only charge $300 for a week at camp? Well, the reason we can afford that is because we subsidize that with other rental groups over the course of the year. And so an actual week at camp costs somewhere around $500 per week if you take in all of the expenses. And so we're subsidizing every camper by $200. Right. And we do that through rentals. The reality is when I arrived, the board was asking questions about how they can stay in the black more often and whatnot. And I remember a board meeting where I went in and I said, I know exactly how we can stay in the black. I got it. And they said, how's that? And I said, stop running summer camp and just do rentals. And then the board, loses their mind. Well, we can't do that. And I said, that's not what I'm proposing. I just want you to know where our money goes. Our money goes to the mission of offering children's camp, right? That's our mission. Christian Children's Summer Camp. That's the mission. That's what we do. And you are choosing as a board by keeping our rates low that we need to find other ways to subsidize that income or subsidize the summer camp expenses, right? So we've put into place a lot of customer service details over the past 10 years, just how we deal with groups, how we greet them. We want groups to come back to us. Our location, as opposed to Sarah was saying, Camp Algonquin is, the distance it is, and even Godrich, for Jonathan, our location is very unique in that we are in the middle of nowhere, but surrounded by 500,000 people that are within a 45-minute drive of our site, right? So you get this, and if you go into Toronto, you're talking about 3 million people within an hour and a half to 2 hours of within a 2.5-hour drive, you easily have well over 3 million people available to you,
Right.
Which is great if you can reach those markets. And we find a lot of our groups come from Toronto. Our rental groups come from Toronto and London, which is London, Ontario's, let's say 450,000 people, and so we get those. When I first arrived, I thought about Detroit, but crossing the border becomes a bigger issue than you would imagine.
Yeah.
As a Canadian who lives by the border, we cross without, right? We just cross, right? We have a passport. We need a passport.
Yeah.
But we have focused instead on Ontario clients, and that has helped us significantly.
Right.
So the model that we have has been very, very much, we've tweaked little bits of it as we've gone along.
Yeah.
And yeah, most of our buildings are up to date. But now we're at this point where we know that if that's our business model, which is to rent our facility out to help pay for camp, we need to set all of our standards higher for inside those buildings, because at a certain age, people just don't want to stay in a camp bunk. Right. They just don't want to sleep in no matter how nice I can make that room look with paint and sanded floors and new beds and new mattresses, the challenge is it's still a bunk bed, and that throws them for a loop.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's part of your big plan is to continue to develop the facilities so that it's comfortable for rental groups.
Yeah, the reality is we did a major visioning in 2009, and this was when I arrived, it was about financial sustainability. And so when we hit that fairly quickly, I said to the board, where to now? And that's when we came up with this huge plan. If the whole plan was put into place, it'd be easily $10 to $15 million of improvements to the site, which would be great for any camp, right? But we have a plan, and part of that plan is to actually build a hotel-style retreat center, eat, sleep, meet space on site for up to 50 people, so that you can be at camp versus be downtown London at a conference or downtown Toronto at a conference, right? You're in this unique space where when you need to clear your head, you can just step outside and be in nature and really go from there. So we do have the plan that the facility is going to grow. And when we grow, we're going to put in the amenities that are going to help the rental groups as well as summer campers. So, for example, we winterized a building last fall, redid the floors, haven't put new bunks in it, but by winterizing and putting heat into that building, the heat source we used automatically comes with air conditioning in the summer,
right?
Which was a godsend this past summer when it was so humid and so hot. Mm-hmm. And rental groups love that and will pay extra for having air-conditioned cabins, because a lot of people don't like no air conditioning. So
yeah. So Sarah, I've been watching you scribble notes. Is there stuff that's come up that you wanted to add on to?
Yeah, I mean, my notes are just notes in general.
Okay.
Do you want to hear one of them?
Yeah, please.
One of the things I wrote down is business does not equal evil.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think is like kind of an interesting point, because I think sometimes there's like a mentality or a vibe in our industry where if you like start to get business-like or say something about, something that sounds too businessy, especially for those of us that are in the nonprofit or religious-based camping world, people are like, whoa, 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 like it's about the kids.
Yeah.
So thinking about how those things can like coexist and help each other out, I think is something that's really important, and something to like not feel bad about like getting businessy or like sticking up for yourself or for your, your own program. Because sometimes we're like, well, we don't do that.
Right.
And I think that does you a disservice.
Right.
So that was one of the things I wrote down.
And the other, that and your quote from before reminds me of something that I often say to clients too, which is that money moves the mission. If you're a mission-focused place, you have to have money to be able to do that. And if your only thing is mission, then you're not funding that in any particular way. You're not being thoughtful about that in any particular way.
Right.
And Travis, that's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And it's huge because a lot of people who are mission focused, especially board members who join a nonprofit camp's board, they're thinking about what you do as the mission.
Right.
And our philosophy, and the philosophy I've tried to get into our board and talk when I talk at conferences about camp as a business and whatnot, is this idea that when we make decisions, we are only the stewards of the property at this moment in time, right?
Yeah.
We're a unique snapshot at this moment in time. We need to make sure this property is here into the future. And if we don't make good business decisions, then the mission is going to fail, because we don't have a facility to use to do the mission. And so if we don't make, the phrase we use at Pierce Williams is today's camper's camper. This idea that you have a 7-year-old come to camp, and in 20 years they'll be 27 and start to have kids. So 7 years after that, their kid can come to camp. So 27 years from now, are we making decisions that are going to apply in 2043? Right. And if so when we're building a building or when we're putting in a program, all of these things, not any program, but like if I was to put in a high ropes course, my question would be, is it going to last 27 years? Right. Is it any program that you're going to put a lot of infrastructure in for? We ask that question because we need to make smart choices to be here for today's camper's camper. And I'm amazed at how many people don't think ahead. And
yeah. And when I talk to, I do a lot of training with staff who are like emerging from being like head counselors, like program directors or that kind of thing. And a lot of times what I say, and it kind of echoes what was said before, but as a camp counselor or junior counselor, you're thinking like an hour down the road or a day down the road, and then as a head counselor, you're thinking like 2 days, 3 days, a week down the road. Program director, 3 months down the road, what are we doing next season? I got to get everything in line for the spring or whatever it is. And then as you kind of like go up the chain, you're zooming out, further and further. So to help people make that transition, that usually helps click with people to think about how can you as the exec look, 100 years down the road.
Yeah.
And I've certainly been there when execs far before me were not thinking 100 years down the road, and I end up with like a septic system that no one knows where it is.
Right.
And we're like, oh, we need to find this, that sort of thing. So it's definitely a service, even though we might not personally reap the benefits of it.
Right.
Travis, can I make a comment on
that?
that?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Just two things on what Sarah and Joe were just saying. I think it's very important to think for the future, but I think it's equally important to think for next year as well. So I think when people are doing their financial planning, I think they should definitely have an aspect of their financial plan for 1 year, for 5 year, and then for longer term. But I think often people get too focused on one or the other. Right. They're only thinking for next year. They're not looking at their 5-year trend, or they're not planning for 5 years out. Or people get focused on, I can't do X, Y, Z because I have to do ABC because ABC is going to be good in 50 years. But if you're not profitable right now, 50 years, you have to weigh what's most important. Yeah. I wanted to make a comment. I like Sarah's point a lot that business isn't evil. I've done this past year, I did some financial consulting for 3 different camps, and something that became apparent for me was when people, and I think this is human nature, when you're not really good at something, and this, I admire you, Sarah, that you're what you said, like that you're doing your MBA now, and it's not your background. Business is not your background. I mean, my first degree is a Bachelor of Commerce, so doing an MBA was no stretch for me. It was a natural fit. But for you, it's a lot more of a stretch. But it's good because I think people, when they don't know something and they're worried about it, when human nature is, if we're not good at something, we tend to ignore it, or we do get scared of it. So if we're not, if a lot of camp people are good at programming and are good at our more camp things, they'll sway away from the financial aspects. But it is important, and it's not evil, and it's not scary, but it can be if you don't know it. And working with a couple of different camps, I quickly realized that even common financial terminology, it's a lot of people are not familiar with it, and so you have to back up. And we can't, assumptions that would be made in a business type environment cannot be made. And so things have to be, people have to learn it and start very basic and do some general reading and learn some general skills. and then it will quickly build. But I really do think that then it doesn't become evil. It becomes a part of your repertoire for what you can do and have.
Yeah, and also not to be afraid to get the right people on your team, right? If finance isn't your thing, it's going to take you a long time to learn it. And that's when you bring in the finance consultant or someone on your board, or the CFO or whoever it is. Because if we ignore it, it's just going to bite us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's no good either. It's easy to ignore for a little bit, and then
I think that's an important point too, because when you do a lot of the case studies in MBA, you learn most of the most successful managers will say they surround themselves with smarter people than they are and listen to them, and then they just put into action their advice. And two of the camps I was working with, I suggested that they hire an accountant to do their books for them. And they were really surprised, and they said, we can't afford that. And I said, I can almost guarantee you that the revenue that you'll save, or the taxes that you'll get back or save, will pay for that fee. Right. And they were surprised, and then I said, we do that. I said, even though I have a financial background, we have a chartered management accountant that does who we pay to be our treasurer, and she does it for other small businesses, and so I believe the money she gets us back in taxes pays for her fee. There's a fee for the service, but she also does the work in an eighth of the time of what a general bookkeeper or another staff person who's not trained would do.
Right.
And she lives 3 hours from our camp, and we do everything. We do everything online. Yeah. But I can email her any day and have a financial statement sent to me if I choose.
Yeah. Right. That's awesome. One of the things our CFO at the YMCA in Ann Arbor said to me is a lot of times organizations like ours pinch pennies, not pounds.
Right.
Right. So that always sticks out in my mind. Like, how can we maybe make an investment now that will save us money in the long run, that sort of thing, instead of scrambling all the time.
Lots of camps won't know what a CFO is.
Yeah.
Which is
Chief Financial Officer.
Yes. Good catch, Jonathan. That's great.
But a chief financial officer, but that's a great thing to have.
Yeah.
And it's different than a treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe one of the outcomes of this is we create a financial term dictionary for camp pros, just so they can feel more confident in financial meetings.
Yeah.
So, just sort of one more quick round before we start to wrap things up for this conversation. As I said at the introduction, there's so much of this that I think is so important, and I do want to come back to it. So if you're listening and some of these ideas are hitting home, or there's stuff that you have more questions about, please reach out to me. You can email me, travis@camphacker.tv, or message me in some way, and let me line up some more questions, and I'll bring these folks back to help. We'll do this in stages. We'll take small bites, and as an industry, we'll start to feel really much more confident in this stuff. Jonathan, one of the things that I noticed, and you and I have talked about this before, is that really getting this stuff in order gave you and Teresa a lot more confidence in dealing with your board, and a lot more power in that relationship. Not that you're going into it to have power over your board, but it just gave you a lot more ability to say, we want to take these risks and we deserve to. How did you folks get through that stage of, what was it like for you?
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it exactly like that, but I think an interesting thing to note is that Teresa, who is the co-executive director with me, she's a Presbyterian minister, and Teresa doesn't come at things from a financial background at all, nor is she actually interested in finances at all. But she has become much more interested in finances as when she was a minister at a church, she had to learn some of it to run the annual meeting at a church. And then definitely at the camp, she's learned a lot as well. And while it's not her favorite thing, she's definitely learned the importance of it. But she comes at things first from definitely from a mission aspect, undoubtedly. And then I'll often come at things from a financial aspect first. And that diversity is important. And I think that goes to what Sarah's saying, surrounding yourself with good people. And then it's the same thing with our board. We definitely try to recruit people with all different backgrounds. But specifically to your question, Travis, I think if you're when we created a culture of change, really,
Yeah.
both with the board and the staff. Our first few years, it was definitely difficult as we said we'd like to do this and made proposals, and there was lots of what you would generally expect, like, well, but we've done it this way for a long time, or oh, there's the usual objections. But I think when the plan is presented with both a sound financial aspect and a mission aspect, and going back to what Joe said, explaining how things match with the program and your goals, and we have a clear vision. And one of the first things we did was we updated the vision and mission statement for the camp with board members and stakeholders using an external consultant. And I think that was really important because it allowed us to point towards that and always use that as a basis for analyzing what we're doing. But the end result is after year after year of doing changes and updates and improvements that continually led to further financial improvement, then now it's gone from exactly the opposite of there's almost never an objection. There's an expectation at every meeting of what is being presented this time that we're going to be able to do, and we're going to discuss how we're going to be able to do it, not put up roadblocks.
Right.
So it's creating that culture, but it's not just creating the culture, it's following through.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I also think that you have been able to give confidence in both directions, up to your board and down to the people who work for you, and then therefore the campers and their families. You've been able to prove that you can do these things, that these changes are going to pay off, and you're able to build confidence in both directions in your leadership. And it's pretty great to see. As an alumni, it's certainly one of the things I love about Kintail, is seeing what the two of you have done in terms of the confidence in the community. So, Joe, for you, what sort of thing would you advise either a youngish, a new camp director, age doesn't matter, but a new camp director, in developing these kind of practices within their own experiences? If it's not something that they're drawn to, or they don't have a banking background like Jonathan.
If they're just getting started, there is a book called Basic Camp Management? Is that there's numerous editions of it, but it goes over the basics of like setting up your accounting and all of those things. If you're starting from scratch or you're new, just simply reading through something like that, because it's a camp centered book, and that can help you a ton. I think the more interested, I think we all choose our own unique specialties as camp directors, things we're going to focus on versus things that we are going to let somebody else do or pay someone else to do. And so accounting has never been my strongest, but that's a big part of running camp as a business. But marketing is another huge part of running camp as a business, and understanding how markets work and how marketing and sales work and all of those things. So it's choosing those specialties, and a book like Basic Camp Management will certainly help people understand all of those aspects, and then they can choose from there where they want to specialize and continue to go.
Right. Right on. And Sarah, what advice would you give to somebody just getting serious about this, or seeing that their life as a camp leader, camp manager is changing from program focus to admin focus?
I mean, you have to be okay with the fact that your life is changing, but being okay with making the magic happen behind the curtain in like a non-glamorous way, is okay. And one thing that was really beneficial to me that was kind of cool as I was learning, I would bring in some of my like program directors and teach them some of the business aspects at the same time, so it didn't feel so isolating. So not just like relying on my mentors or the CFO, CEO, the people above me, bringing in the barn director and saying, okay, like let's spend an hour together writing the barn budget, let's talk this out, teaching that piece. So not being the only champion for business mentality, but having other people take ownership of some of the business aspects, have involvement in those business aspects, was really rewarding, helped me maintain those mentoring relationships. And also another important thing from a business aspect is keeping all camp jobs considered as professional jobs. So helping that trips director who actually, I have a trips director who works at Goldman Sachs right now in New York City. A former trips director, like bringing him in, doing the budget. Like, okay, Rolf, like this is going to be like a more another professional thing to add to your list of experiences. So I think knowing that you're not alone and learning and teaching those aspects is important.
Right on. The other thing I would say is these different skills are important, and in the same way Jonathan said, you have to make it a culture of change. You have to accept that as a camp director, and more every year, change is going to be a huge part of your job. The camp directors that I worry about the most are, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've had a number of them say to me, I'm not going to learn internet stuff because I'm within 15 years of retiring, and I'm not going to need it. I was like, man, you're so wrong. It's going to come up and bite you. So I think you have to develop your own philosophy of, I'm going to be constantly learning. I can't learn everything about accounting in the next month, but I'm going to try to learn something new all the time. And you really have to be developing your own self with this philosophy that learning and change is the only way to survive, not just in the camp industry, but in any job. Change is happening so rapidly in all jobs that it has to be the key to your success, is that philosophy. The other thing I think is that when this stuff really gets to you, then it's time to get out of the office and perform at campfire, lead a song, be the male guy, all those sorts of things. Jonathan's a famous male guy character.
Male guy is the most popular guy on camp. Oh no, male like letters, or male like female?
The letters, okay. Letters and packages. Anyway, just something that gets you out of the office to see the product of all of this focus that you put in. For me, it was always get up early and walk the trails, just because my love of the site sustained me through a lot of really trying times. Just the place, knowing that the place is going to be there for others to enjoy. So. So lots of great thoughts from the three of you. I really appreciate it. If any of this stuff rang true with you, I would really appreciate it if you would take just a second and give us a review on iTunes. It helps. I see them all when they come in, and I'm always grateful when there's usually 2 or 3 a month. As we're beginning our 2016-17 season, it'd be awesome to have some new reviews. We've made that easy for you. If you go to camphacker.tv/iTunes, that'll link will open up your iTunes and you can write a review there. If you're on other platforms, looks like almost half of you are on Android or using other apps to listen to your podcasts, then those usually have a built-in review system as well. So you just click on our shows and write a review there. But let me say thank you to the three of you for bringing this awesome discussion and raising the level of professionalism of the people that are listening and watching. What I want to do now is move us on to our tool of the week. If you're just joining us for this episode for the first time, or just listening and catching up on old shows, the tool of the week is something that each one of the panelists bring that they feel helps them be a better camp director. And everybody has really brought great tools focused on a lot of the philosophy stuff that we've been talking about today. So, Jonathan, I love where you're going with yours. Could you tell us what your tool of the week is, please?
Oh, my tool of the week is Microsoft Excel.
Yep.
I use spreadsheets all the time, and I have a annual spreadsheet that has about a dozen tabs across the bottom, and I just copy that over each year. And those tabs and the budget and the information in them is key. And I find it very easy to use. I think it's my tool of the week because it's sexy, Travis.
So Excel is sexy.
Just like
that.
you.
Jonathan, what?
I work that in for you.
Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sexy spreadsheets.
Right on. Jonathan, those tabs across the bottom, what sort of stuff would be in each of those, or a few of those that you can think of?
And I use lots of different spreadsheets for lots of different purposes, but I definitely have this one spreadsheet that's my management spreadsheet, I guess I'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first tab is the budget, where I update it with what's going on year to date, and last year's actual results and last year's budget.
Right.
And then my next tab is kind of a running budget for the next 5 years. The next tab is a 5-year trend. So I always want to see where the camp's been for the past 5 years. And then after that, it's just some other working spreadsheets I have. I like to keep a list of capital improvements as what we're working on right now, what's a midterm project and what's long-term. And then I can just add to that whenever staff or other people have good suggestions, we can just put that on there. And then I can we can gather some pricing information. And then I have the next tab on it is the current staff. There's one for senior staff and the positions they're holding and their salaries. And then there's one for seasonal staff and their positions and their salaries. The next tab is a pricing tab. So it's what our current cost is, and then how many campers it takes to get to our budgeted amount. So I can update that all the time. So if we've got 800 campers registered, like I know from doing the budget that I need, say, 1,100 campers to meet budget. So then as I enter it in, though, we can see how many campers are registered for each camp and what fee they're paying and how we're coming. So we can know when we're 70% to budget, 90% to budget, and ultimately 120% to budget, because that's always a nice goal.
Yes.
Then the next tab is the same thing, but for the rental groups.
Right.
So listing the rental groups and anticipated revenue, and then recording as we observe that revenue to know how we're coming, because I want to know where we're coming with the financial goals. So and then there's a few others just similar to those.
Yeah. So it's really your whole management dashboard is available to you there with that setup.
And then I just copy it over from 2016 to 2017. I've already done that. I do I would copy it over for 2017 halfway through the year, and then start updating things for that, but then looking ahead already to 2018 and so on. But I really, and then obviously sometimes you're deleting things and adding things, but I think it's really simple to carry all that data forward. But then you have the record of last year's data right there. But I just like having all that data under the tabs and then continually updating it so it's accessible. And then sometimes it's a good reminder, because I'll flip through the tabs and then it will remind me that, right, I haven't looked at this or updated it, but I need to. And it's not that I do all that work, but I can ask somebody to do it as well and then put it into my spreadsheet, so that I know that I know where things are at.
Right. All right. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Joe, what's your tool?
My tool of the week is a book by Marshall Goldsmith called Triggers: Creating Behaviors That Last. As we get older, we realize that creating behavioral change becomes difficult once we set into our ways. And this is a book that, with research, I found that really has effectively found out the only effective way to create lasting change. And it's based on engaging questions, this idea that you need to ask yourself engaging questions, not just questions. So there's lots of people who journal at the end of the day and check in, did I set goals? Did I do this? Did I do whatnot? But what they found is that by adding a simple, did you do your best, or did I do my best, to the front of all those questions, you're judging something differently than a yes or a no answer. You're judging something on a scale of saying, did I do my best to eat healthy today, versus did I eat healthy today? Well, I had a donut, so no. Well, did I do my best to eat healthy today? You can rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 and say, yeah, today was a 7, or today was an 8, or today was a 2, right? So they found that if you ask these questions continually for a number of weeks, it will create the change you're seeking. And the best way to do it is to actually find someone else who will call you up, physically call you up every day to answer those questions too. So you're accountable to someone else, right? It's not just you writing in a book saying, yeah, I'm going to give myself 10, 10, 10, 10, and 10. The person you're talking with needs to be able to say to you, so I see you set a goal to work out on a daily basis. Did I do my best to get exercise? And for the past 2 weeks, I'm noticing that you're always at zero. So is that a goal you want to accomplish, or is that a goal that you can take off of your list? So it's a very interesting method and way for us to create change as we go forward. It's a great read. I listen to the audiobook, and then I do this with certain books. I listened to the audiobook and then I bought the physical book so I could highlight it and see things in print.
Cool. And for you, Sarah, what's your tool?
I also brought a book. It's called Getting to Yes. Fisher and Yuri are the authors, and it's a book about negotiations. So just like I said before, sometimes we think like business is evil. Sometimes we think like negotiations are really scary. I don't want to do that. I don't know how to do that. I'm never going to get what I want or what I need. And this book is a really helpful tool to teach you how to do negotiations and give you tools to not just identify what you want and get what you want, but to help identify what the other party wants and needs, and find opportunities for mutual gain, which I think is like super, super beneficial in a camp setting. We work with so many vendors, parents, board members. There's like so many stakeholders and people who we deal with on a daily basis. Having some of these negotiating skills, which are really more like compromising and like creativity skills, are really important. So I really enjoyed it, and I negotiated my cable and internet bill down by $30 a month after reading the book. So the payoff is definitely strong.
Right on.
Another tip I learned in business school is if you want to read a business book, but you like don't want to read the whole thing, just Google like Getting to Yes and then summary,
right?
Or like the author's names and summary, and you'll find very easily like a one-pager that says all the critical points in the book. So I really also recommend doing that, because we all know we don't have time to read every book that we want to read, especially these nonfiction kind of deals.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, mine is my tool of the week is MBA themed, although not a true MBA. I this summer did Seth Godin's Alt MBA, which is a 5-week course that I think it would be so amazing for any camp director to do. It's intensive. It's 5 weeks at probably 30 hours a week or more. I definitely know that more than half of the people I took it with were working full-time while doing the course. But you learn lots of things, including how much you can accomplish when you really set your mind to it, how priorities work, and that's just sort of around getting this course done and excelling at it. But there's lots of really amazing stuff on goal setting, on doing an evaluation of your organization and figuring out how to use the strengths you have to get more, or to find the things that are kind of blind spots in your organization. It is an amazing investment, and excuse me, I'd hardly recommend it. What I'm going to do is put my alumni code in the show notes, or I'll have Matt put those in the show notes. And so you can let people know that you heard about it from me. If you do check it out and apply, there are a lot of people apply and a lot of people don't get in, but it's one of those things I would encourage you to apply to more than once, because it is really almost a life-changing experience having been through this, and heartily endorse it. So we'll put the links to each one of these different things, the books, the Alt MBA, into Microsoft Excel in the show notes. And so you can go to camphacker.tv/podcast and find the information there. Sarah, if people want to follow up with you and ask you any questions, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to visit my website and or email me. My email is sarah@kurtzmckinnoncreative.com, which is KURTZMCKINNON creative. And Sarah has an H on the end.
Right. Sarah with an H. Right on. Well, Sarah, thank you for joining us. And it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. Jonathan, how can people reach you if they have some questions, follow up?
Sure. My email's grow@campkintel.ca. And that's also, it's my bio and emails on our website, campkintel.ca.
Great. Jonathan, I'm so glad I had a chance to get you on. I'm looking forward to having you back on again.
Sure. Thanks, Travis.
You're welcome. Joe, how about you?
Well, if people want to see what Pierce Williams is up to, you can come to campisbetter.com. That's our website. And you can reach me either through that website, campisbetter.com, or you can reach me through my personal site, which is yoyojoe, yoyojoe.com, and can check up on me there and connect to social media there too.
Great. Well, good to chat with you again, Joe.
Thanks.
And so once again, the show notes will be at camphacker.tv/podcast. And you'll see that and the other episodes of the show. This is episode 92. So if you're interested in some of the other topics we've covered, I would encourage you to go there and check that out. Or open up the podcast app on your phone and subscribe for free. And then the new shows will be automatically downloaded to your phone when they are available. I encouraged you to do this before, but I want to once again say, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at CampHacker or Travis@camphacker.tv if you have any questions or comments. Specifically, if you have any questions about thinking of camp as a business that we can use in our follow-up call. So thank you again to Joe and Jonathan and Sarah for joining us. And thanks for the evening, friends.